Well, I'm joined now by Jason Johnson, an Al Jazeera contributor who's also a professor of political science at Hiram College. Thanks for being with us again, Jason. And I know you have a personal connection to this tragedy in that you knew one of the victims. Talk about that if you're comfortable, and I also want to get your thoughts, your initial thoughts on this senseless tragedy.
Yeah, I actually, the first political campaign I ever ran, and the first one I ever ran for a Democrat, was actually Clementa Pinckney's campaign. He was the pastor of the church back in '97, and he was a great man. And it's easy for us to say that after a tragedy, but I can say he was always a great man. He had a level of dedication and sincerity and empathy for his community that was visible to everybody, his political supporters and enemies alike. And this is not just a personal loss, but this is a political loss for the entire community. This is a horrible tragedy. It is an act of terrorism. It is an assassination. And it remains to be seen if it'll be treated that way, but it should be.
And in terms of your initial thoughts about what's happened here and the reports that are coming out now that the suspect had some connections to white supremacist beliefs.
Right, and that's the key here. America is just not honest about race relations. He's a white supremacist. And the goal of white supremacy is to kill black people, not just keep them from voting, not keep them from working, not keep them from health care, but to kill black people. And he was only 21 years old. So clearly we have a country that still coddles and supports and encourages that kind of behavior. And you have a state like South Carolina that still flies a Confederate flag. You have political leaders who don't want to discuss this in any sort of difficult way. And so I think it's time to make some serious changes in how this country addresses racism, how this country addresses violence, because this wasn't just an act against black people, this was an act against a political leader. And it's time for our country to take those sorts of problems seriously rather than trying to bifurcate them into, well, it's religion or, well, it's race, rather than seeing it as both.
You mentioned there the issue of how America deals with violence. This is just the latest in a string of multiple shootings, and obviously President Obama mentioned this as well. This brings up again the issue of gun ownership in the United States.
Yes, and the fact that gun ownership, look, this is a perfect example. Dylan Roof, the man who committed this crime, he had a criminal record. He had already spent time in jail. He already had a criminal record for drug use and was still given a gun by a family member when he was 21 years old. And the problem is there are no federal gun laws in the United States. So even if the president came out tomorrow and said no one who has a previous criminal record can get their hands on a gun, that may not apply in South Carolina. So the fix has to be more structural. The fix has to be in how people are trained, how police are educated, and the kinds of attitudes that are considered acceptable for political rhetoric, because legally we can't stop people from having guns in the United States.
Do you think anything is going to change as a result of this particular shooting? Because we've been down this road before with previous shootings, and the debate comes to the surface again about gun violence, and nothing changes. So do you think things will change this time?
Nothing's going to change. If a group of elementary school children, white elementary school children in America, can be massacred in a shooting in Sandy Hook and no one does anything in Congress, then I really doubt that the lives of 9 African Americans in a church in South Carolina is going to lead to any changes either. And part of the reason we can see that in the United States is because the political leaders are already talking about healing and how we need to heal from this tragedy. You cannot heal if you cannot even agree on the diagnosis about what made you sick. And unfortunately, much of the political leadership in this country doesn't want to address the sickness in this country. They'd rather move on, paper it over, and express tragedy and concern rather than address the real problems.
I appreciate your thoughts as always, Jason Johnson. Unfortunate that it had to be under these circumstances. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.